He was accused for no reason. In front of everyone he knew. One moment he was holding his little girl. The next, strangers were recording him like a crime scene. Her tiny voice kept asking, "Daddy, did we do something wrong?" He didn't yell. He didn't run. He just stood there, calm, while the world pointed fingers. And when the truth came out, every single voice went silent. Welcome to Racism Core. If you believe in fairness and real stories that reveal the truth, make sure you subscribe and join our growing family. And please, share this video with anyone who's ever been judged unfairly in everyday life. The park was quiet that afternoon. Just the sound of swings and a couple of kids chasing a soccer ball. My daughter, Mia, was sitting on my shoulders, laughing so hard I thought she'd fall off. We'd just finished ice cream from the truck that always parks near the gate. Vanilla for her, chocolate for me. Everything was normal, until it wasn't. I noticed a woman watching us. You know that kind of stare, not the friendly kind, the one that makes your skin crawl. At first, I thought maybe she recognized me from work or church or something. So I smiled. She didn't smile back. Instead, she whispered into her phone. Then she stepped closer to Mia and asked, "Sweetie, are you okay? Is this man your dad?" Mia looked at her, confused. She said, "That's my daddy." Her voice was soft, like she didn't understand the question. The woman frowned. Then she looked at me. Not like I was a dad holding his daughter, but like I was holding something I shouldn't have. I said, "Is something wrong?" She didn't answer, just took a step back and said, "I think you should stay right there." That's when I saw her phone again. She was dialing. I could hear it. "Yes, I'm at Riverside Park. There's a man here, with a little girl. She looks scared." My chest went cold. I looked at Mia. She wasn't scared, not until she saw my face. Then she started to hold me tighter. I wanted to walk away, but something told me not to. If I left, it would look worse. If I stayed, I'd be humiliated. I stayed. A few minutes later, I heard sirens in the distance. They sounded small at first, then louder, closer. I swear to you, those were the longest minutes of my life. Mia whispered, "Daddy, did we do something bad?" And I said, "No, baby, we didn't." But my throat was shaking when I said it. 2 police cars rolled up. Doors opened. Everyone turned to look. I saw people taking out their phones, recording, like I was some kind of show. The officers walked toward me, slow, careful. One of them kept his hand near his belt. The other one squinted like he was trying to read my face. "Sir, we got a call about a possible abduction," one said. I froze. I could barely speak. "An abduction? She's my daughter." They looked at Mia. She hid her face in my chest. "Can we talk for a second, say?" Every parent knows that protective feeling, when you'd rather take a bullet than see your kid scared. That's what it felt like. I nodded. They asked me to step aside. One officer talked to the woman who called. The other one stood near me, still watching. People around us started whispering. I heard one say, "Oh my God, maybe he really did." I couldn't even finish that sentence in my head. My daughter tugged my sleeve. "Daddy, why are they looking at us?" I didn't have an answer, not one that would make sense to a 5-year-old. And that's when it hit me. It didn't matter what I said or did. Right now, they didn't see a dad. They saw a headline. The officer asked for my ID. I handed it over with shaking hands. He looked at it for a while, then looked at me again. "What's your relationship to the child?" "My daughter," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's my daughter." He didn't write anything down, just stared, like he was waiting for something, a confession maybe. Then he asked Mia her name. She said it softly, still hugging my leg. He smiled at her, then looked back at me. "Can you prove it, say?" That line hit me harder than anything. Can you prove it? I reached for my phone, trying to find pictures. Photos of her birthday, school, the one with her missing tooth. But my hands were trembling so bad I could barely scroll. The officer's partner came back. He said something under his breath. They both glanced toward the woman. She stood there, arms crossed, like she had done something heroic. And I thought, is this what being good looks like now? Calling the cops on a moment you don't understand. They asked to speak with Mia again. This time, she was crying. She kept saying, "I want to go home." One of the officers crouched down beside her and said, "Hey, sweetie, can you tell me who this man is?" She sniffled and whispered, "That's my daddy. We were eating ice cream." The whole park went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. The officer looked up at me, then at the woman, then at his partner. He stood up slowly and said, "Say, I think we're good, hey?" No apology yet. No explanation. Just those words. The woman's face changed. She looked confused, maybe embarrassed. But she didn't say sorry. She just said, "I was trying to help." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My chest felt like it was full of smoke. I held Mia close, kissed the top of her head, and started walking away. But as we passed, I caught the woman's eyes for a second. She looked away first. Later that night, when I was putting Mia to bed, she asked again, "Daddy, why did that lady think you were bad?" I didn't have a clean answer. I just said, "Sometimes, people believe things before they know the truth." She nodded, half asleep. Then she said, "But you didn't shout at her. You just stayed nice." And that hit me harder than the whole scene at the park, because in her little world, kindness still made sense. When she finally drifted off, I sat there in the dark, wondering how many times people had been helped the same way. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was tired. Tired of being mistaken for something I'm not. Tired of proving what should already be seen. Before I turned off the light, I looked at his sleeping face and thought, maybe the best revenge isn't shouting back. Maybe it's raising her to never make the same mistake. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. Couldn't sleep anyway. The whole night I kept replaying it. The sirens. The whispers. That woman's face when she said she was just trying to help. I got up, made coffee, sat by the window, watched the same park from across the street. The same place where it all happened. Funny how something can look peaceful even after it breaks you inside. Mia came in rubbing her eyes. "Can we go to the park again, Daddy?" My heart skipped. I didn't expect that question so soon. I smiled weakly. "Not today, baby. Maybe later." She nodded and went to draw on the floor with her crayons. I stared at her for a long time, trying to understand how a 5-year-old could move on so easily, and how an adult like me couldn't. I had to go to work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone would somehow know. Like the story had already spread. On the way to my car, I passed the woman's house. Yeah, she lived just a few blocks down. And she was outside, watering her plants like nothing happened. Our eyes met again. And this time, she looked away even faster. No apology. No small wave. Just guilt and silence. At work, things felt different. Or maybe it was just me. My coworkers were friendly, but I kept thinking, if they saw that video online, would they believe me first, or her? You start realizing how fragile trust really is. How one lie, or one assumption, can change everything. My boss called me in later that morning. Said he'd heard something. Someone in the neighborhood apparently posted the video. No context. Just the part where I'm holding Mia and the cops show up. "Hey man, I know this is sensitive," he said. "But is everything okay? We just want to make sure you're all right." That word again. All right. Like I was recovering from something. Not being accused of something I never did. I told him it was fine. Told him it was all a misunderstanding. But he didn't meet my eyes when he said, "That's good to hear." On my lunch break, I sat in my car. Didn't even eat. Just scrolled through my phone. And there it was. A video titled "Man Confronted at Park." You decide what's really happening. Thousands of views already. Comments split in half. Some saying, "Poor guy, is clearly her dad." Others saying, "Looks suspicious though. Why is the kid crying?" People don't need facts anymore. They just need a feeling. And once they have it, you can't take it back. I wanted to reply. To defend myself. To shout that I'm not the monster they think I am. But then I remembered Mia. Her little voice saying, "You just stayed nice." And I put the phone down. That night, I picked her up from school. She ran to me like nothing had ever happened. Her teacher smiled politely. But I noticed the hesitation. That split second before she handed Mia her bag. Maybe she saw the video too. Maybe everyone had. At dinner, my mom called. She'd seen it. I could hear the worry in her voice, and the anger underneath it. You can't just let people treat you like that, she said. I know, Ma, but what's the point of shouting? The point, she said, is to show them you're not small. But I was tired of fighting to be seen. Sometimes silence says more than noise ever can. Still, that night I couldn't sleep again. The world was quiet, but my head wasn't. I kept thinking about the woman, about her garden, her shaking hands, the way she looked away that morning, and I started wondering if she even realized what she did, if she'd told her friends she saved a child. While the real damage stayed with us, I wanted to knock on her door, not to argue, but to ask one simple thing. Why? Why do people see danger where there's only love? Why is fear always louder than truth? But I didn't go, because sometimes the answer hurts more than the silence. Instead, I checked on Mia again. She was sleeping with her arms around her teddy bear, the same way she'd held me that day in the park. I whispered, "You did nothing wrong, baby," even though she couldn't hear me. Then I sat on the edge of her bed and thought, if a stranger can twist your story in seconds, how do you ever take your peace back? What would you do if the whole world believed a lie about you? 2 days passed, but the noise didn't stop. The video kept spreading. Different captions this time. Suspicious man confronted at park. Hero neighbor saves a child. I didn't even recognize myself in those clips anymore. Just a still frame of me holding my crying daughter, frozen in someone else's story. I tried to ignore it, tried to bury it under wake, but it followed me everywhere. When I walked into the grocery store, people stared a bit longer. At the gas station, a man nodded like he recognized me, but couldn't place from where. Even Mia's school started calling to double-check pickup protocols. That one hit the hardest. They'd never called before. Now, they wanted me to sign an extra form, show my ID again, like I was a new parent they didn't trust yet. I said nothing, just smiled and said sure, because what's the point of arguing when people have already decided who you are? That night, after Mia went to bed, I sat in the kitchen with my laptop open. I searched my own name, and there it was, dozens of results, comments, reposts, hashtags. Some people defended me, said I looked like a good dad. Others said, you never know these days. It's crazy how people love a story more than they love the truth, especially when they get to play judge and jury from behind a screen. My phone buzzed. It was my friend Jason. He said, "Bro, you good? I saw that video. That's messed up." I told him, yeah, I'm fine. But my voice cracked a little. He said, "You should post something. Clear your name." But I didn't want to, because I shouldn't have to. Why explain being a father? Why prove love with paperwork and videos? The next morning, there was a knock at the door. It was the same woman, the one who made the call. She stood there, awkward, a small bag of cookies in her hand, like guilt wrapped in sugar. I opened the door halfway. She said, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Her voice trembled a bit, but not enough to sound real. I waited. She kept talking. I was scared. You understand, right? I just wanted to protect the child. The child. She couldn't even say my daughter's name. I wanted to ask her, protect her from what? A man giving her ice cream, a laugh, a hug. But I didn't. I just said, "She's fine. We're fine," and started to close the door. Then she said something that froze me again. "I hope this doesn't ruin your reputation." Your reputation. Not my mistake. Not I'll take down the video. Just that, like it was a bad rumor that happened to me, not something she caused. I didn't slam the door. I just let it close slowly, like the end of a scene you don't want to watch again. After she left, I stood there for a long time, hand still on the doorknob, thinking about how people can break your peace, and then try to fix it with cookies. Mia came into the hallway, rubbing her eyes. "Who was that, Daddy?" "Just someone who got confused," I said. She tilted her head, like she knew I wasn't telling the full truth, but didn't push it. That night, we watched a movie together. Something light, a cartoon she loved. But halfway through, she said, "Daddy, when people think you're bad, how do you make them believe you again?" I paused the TV, looked at her, and said, You don't try too hard. You just keep being good. The truth always finds its way. But deep down, I wasn't sure anymore. The next few weeks, things got quieter online. Another story came up, a new outrage to feed on, and mine faded down the timeline. But it left something behind. A shadow. A quiet mistrust that stayed in people's eyes a second too long. Even at work, I noticed small things. My manager stopped letting me pick up his kids for office events. Like he didn't want to risk the wrong image. Jason said I should sue. But how do you sue suspicion? How do you fight whispers? Then something happened that I didn't expect. The officer who came that day, the one who talked to Mia, showed up at my door one evening. He said, "Hey, I was in the area. Just wanted to check on you too." I let him in. He didn't say much at first. Just looked around at Mia's toys scattered on the floor. Then he said, "I've been a cop 12 years. I've seen real kidnappers. I knew right away you weren't one." I looked at him, unsure what to say. He sighed. "Doesn't matter though, does it? One phone call, and the whole world believes the worst first." We sat there for a while. He didn't wear his uniform that night. Just jeans and a tired face. He said the woman called the station again, to make sure everything was okay. Like she needed to be praised again for her concern. He said he told her to leave it alone. And that next time, maybe ask questions before calling sirens. Before he left, he looked at me and said, "Most folks won't admit it, but they are scared of what they don't understand. Keep showing them who you are, even when it hurts." After he left, I stood by the door again. Same spot, same silence. But this time, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. People will always see what they want to see. But that doesn't mean I have to live by their story. A week later, I went back to the park with Mia. Same bench, same ice cream truck, same sunlight bouncing off the swings. A few parents looked at us. Some smiled, some didn't. Mia pointed to a kid crying by the slide. She ran over and helped him pick up his fallen toy. Then she came back and said, "He thought I'd laugh at him, but I didn't." I smiled and said, "That's good, baby. That's how you change things." She nodded. Simple, innocent, true. And in that small moment, I realized something bigger than everything that happened. The world doesn't change through noise. It changes through quiet examples. Through kids who learn love before Faye. Still, sometimes I catch myself replaying that day. The sound of sirens, the crowd, the way she said, "Is this man your dad?" And I wonder if the woman ever looks back, if she ever tells the story right now, or if she still believes she was the hero. Because deep down, I know, for some people, being right feels better than being kind. A month passed, but it still followed me. Not the sirens anymore, not even the whispers, just the weight of that one day. That one wrong moment that never really left. People say time heals. But sometimes, it just teaches you how to pretend better. I'd learned to smile again. To laugh with Mia at breakfast. To make small talk at work. But deep down, I could still feel it. That quiet distance in people's eyes. Like a fingerprint you can't wash off. Even at the coffee shop I'd been going to for years. The barista stopped asking the usual. She just waited for me to say it myself. Like she didn't want to assume anymore. That word, assume. It stuck in my head for days. It's wild how fast people assume the worst. And how slow they are to believe the truth. One night, Jason came over. Brought pizza and beer, like old times. He said, "Man, you're acting like a ghost lately." I laughed it off. But he wasn't wrong. He told me the video had popped up again. On some random Facebook page with a new caption. Another suspicious encounter in the suburbs. I laughed, but it wasn't funny anymore. It was exhausting. Jason said, "You can't just let this slide forever. You gotta speak up." I looked at him and said, "Speak up to who?" "The internet." He shook his head. "No, man, to her." He meant the woman. The one who started it all. I didn't want to. Every part of me wanted to stay quiet. But maybe he was right. Because silence had started to feel like a cage. So the next morning, I walked past her house again. The same small garden. The same white fence. The same wind chime that used to sound peaceful. Now it just reminded me of everything that went wrong. She was outside again, clipping her flowers. She looked up, startled, then straightened like she was ready for confrontation. I said, "Can we talk?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. We stood there awkwardly in her driveway, the sound of sprinklers filling the silence. I told her about the video, how it kept spreading, how people still whispered, how my daughter was scared to go to the park sometimes. Her face went pale, but she didn't say much. Just, "I didn't mean for that to happen." That line again. That easy, empty sentence. Like the apology had an off switch the moment it got uncomfortable. I said, "You didn't mean to, but you did. You called. You said those words." She looked down, fiddling with her hands. I thought she was crying because she was in danger. I took a breath. She was crying because you scared her. Silence again. For the first time, she looked guilty, really guilty. Not the polite kind, not the performance. The kind that makes you realize the mirror finally cracked. Then she said something I didn't expect. "My husband told me not to call. He said I jumped to conclusions too fast." I didn't know what to say to that. Because there it was, the truth hiding behind Faye. She said she'd try to take the video down. But it was already out there. Reshared, re-edited, relived 100 times by strangers who would never know either of us. Before I left, she said softly, "You're a good father." And for the first time, she meant it. I nodded. Didn't say thank you. Just walked away. That night felt lighter somehow. Not fixed, but lighter. I tucked Mia into bed and watched her draw before she slept. She drew a picture of the park. Us on the bench. The sun shining. No police. No crowd. Just peace. I almost cried looking at it. Kids always draw the world how it should be. Not how it is. A few days later, something strange happened. I got an email from a local paper. They wanted to do a story about misunderstandings in public safety, and asked if I'd be willing to talk about what happened. At first, I said no. I didn't want more eyes, more noise. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, maybe silence helps the wrong people feel comfortable. So I said yes. When the reporter came, I told her everything. Not in anger, not to expose anyone, but to show how quickly things can go wrong when fear talks louder than reason. She listened quietly. Then she asked, "What was the worst part for you?" I thought for a while, then said, "It wasn't the police. It wasn't the video. It was watching my daughter learn what doubt looks like." She wrote that down slowly, and when the article came out a week later, it was called "The Day Fear Knocked on the Wrong Door." People shared it, but this time, the comments were different. They talked about how easy it is to misjudge someone, how they'd seen it happen, how they'd done it themselves without meaning to. Some even said sorry under the post. And I don't know if they meant it for me, but it felt good anyway. One morning after that, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside, there was just a handwritten note. I was there that day. I was one of the people recording. I deleted my video. I'm sorry. I sat there at the kitchen table for a long time holding that note, thinking how strange it is, that it takes courage to apologize in secret. Maybe people are braver when no one's watching. The next weekend, Mia and I went to the park again. This time, no looks, no whispers, just laughter. Kids running. A world that felt almost normal again. She ran to the swings. And when I pushed her, she looked back at me and said, "Daddy, do you think people are good again?" I smiled, even though I didn't have an answer. "Some of them," I said. "And that's enough for now." That night, I sat by the window again, watching the same park lights flicker. And I realized something. The world doesn't always apologize with words. Sometimes it does it quietly, through one kind act, one small change. But still, every now and then, when I see someone staring a little too long at a parent and their kid, I feel that familiar chill again. And I wonder, have we really learned? Because if one misunderstanding can destroy someone's peace, what does it take to rebuild trust again? It's strange how life goes on, even when something inside you doesn't. The park was back to normal. Kids laughing, dogs running, parents chatting on benches like nothing had ever happened there. But for me, every sound still echoed that day. Every police siren in the distance made my chest tighten for a second, then fade. I thought it would stop eventually. That time would sand down the edges. But pain doesn't really dissipate. It just finds quieter ways to exist. Mia was doing better though. Stronger than me, honestly. Kids bounce back like sunlight after a storm. They don't hold grudges the way adults do. She'd started kindergarten, and every morning before school, she'd hug me twice. One quick, one long. The long one always meant, I remember, Daddy, but I'm okay now. I never said it out loud, but that second hug healed something in me every time. Still, the shadow of that day followed me into places I didn't expect. Work, friends, even church. People didn't say it, but you could feel it in how they looked at you. The slight pause before a handshake. The polite smile that didn't reach their eyes. It's like everyone knew about that video, even if they didn't mention it. And you could never tell who had already judged you and who hadn't. One afternoon, during a company meeting, my manager introduced a new safety policy. Something about child protection awareness. And he said, it's important that we all speak up when something looks wrong. Everyone nodded. But then, he looked straight at me for half a second before moving on. I felt it. That silent sting. Like being accused again without a word. Jason caught my eye from across the table. Gave me a small nod. Like he was saying, ignore it, bro. Let it pass. But inside, it didn't pass. It built pressure. Quietly. Later that evening, as I was leaving the office, a coworker stopped me in the parking lot. She said softly, I just want you to know. I never believed those rumors. I smiled politely, but it broke something in me anyway, because even her not believing meant that she'd heard it. That's how reputation dies, not in noise, but in whispers. Weeks went by like that. Normal on the outside, boiling underneath. Then one Friday evening, Mia's school had a family event. Games, food stalls, music. We went together, trying to just enjoy it. But when we arrived, I noticed the same woman there. The one from the park. Her kids went to the same school apparently. She froze when she saw me. Then tried to smile. That awkward kind of smile that hides behind guilt. I wasn't going to say anything. I didn't want a scene. But then something unexpected happened. Another parent walked up to her, and I heard them whisper, "Is that the guy from the video?" The woman's face went red. She stammered, "That was a misunderstanding. It's not what it looked like." I didn't move. Didn't say a word. Just looked at her. And for the first time, she looked small. Not because I wanted revenge, but because the truth finally weighed more than her version of it. Later that night, I saw her leaving early. She avoided my eyes completely. Funny how the same woman who once stood so confident calling for help, now couldn't even stand near me in a crowd. Life has a quiet way of balancing things sometimes. The next morning, I woke up early, made pancakes with Mia, and for the first time in months, I didn't think about the video first thing in the morning. But I still noticed small things. Like when I walked into a store and people's faces softened when they saw Mia run up calling, "Daddy." As if they needed proof before they relaxed. That was the worst part. The needing to prove something so normal. But then, something beautiful happened. The local paper, the same one that had written the story before, reached out again. They wanted to do a follow-up. Not about the incident this time, but about recovery. About how people rebuild trust after being falsely accused. I hesitated. But then I thought of Mia. Of what kind of story she'd grow up believing about her dad. And I said yes. When the journalist came over, Mia was sitting on the floor coloring. He smiled and said, "You've got a brave little artist there." I said, "She's the reason I didn't break." He asked if I'd forgiven the woman. I thought for a while before answering. "I don't know if forgiveness is something you say," I told him. "It's something you stop fighting with inside yourself. I don't hate her. I just hope she never does it to someone else." He wrote that down carefully. When the second article came out, it was titled "A Father's Grace." It went viral too, but in a different way. This time, people didn't argue in the comments. They reflected. They shared their own stories. How they'd been misjudged. How they'd learned not to jump to conclusions. For once, the internet didn't tear something down. It lifted it up. Even the police department shared the article on their page, with a caption that said, "A reminder that real safety starts with understanding." I can't lie. I cried when I saw that, because after months of feeling small, that felt like being seen again. After that, my inbox started filling up. Messages from strangers, other parents, people saying thank you for sharing. One woman wrote, "My brother went through something similar. Nobody believed him. He gave up trying to explain. Your story gave us peace." I read that one twice, then 3 times. I realized that maybe that's why it happened. Not to break me, but to remind others that judgment has a price. The woman who made the call sent another letter too. Handwritten again. This time longer. She said she'd quit the neighborhood watch group she was part of. Said she realized fear had turned into habit. That she'd started to see danger where there was none. At the end of the letter, she wrote, "I can't undo what I did, but I'm learning to see better." And you know what? I believed her. Because sometimes guilt isn't the end, it's the beginning of awareness. That night, I told Mia a bedtime story about a little bird who was blamed for breaking a nest he didn't touch, and how, in the end, the forest realized it wasn't the bird at all. When I finished, she smiled and said, "That's you, right, Daddy?" I laughed. Something like that. Then she said, "But you didn't fly away. You stayed." And that's when I realized, yay, I stayed. Through the humiliation, through the silence, through the stares. Because leaving doesn't fix it, but staying proves you belong where they tried to erase you. That night, after she slept, I stepped outside, looked up at the stars, and for the first time, the air felt clean again. But deep down, I still wondered, how many others are out there right now, fighting a story that isn't theirs, trying to stay kind in a world that already decided who they are. Time passed quietly after that. Months turned into a year. The world outside kept moving. New hires, new projects, new faces. But something in that office had changed forever. People started talking differently. Not just to Ava, to each other. The fake kindness was gone. It was replaced by something slower, more genuine. Respect that came without performance. I'd see it in the small things. How someone held a door for the janitor. How meetings started with listening instead of competition. How silence didn't feel awkward anymore, just peaceful. Ava never bragged about what she'd built. She didn't need to. Her influence lived in the way people carried themselves now. Then one morning, she called me into her office. Same calm tone, same soft light spilling through the window. "Sit down," she said. I did, trying not to look nervous, but she always saw right through that. She smiled. "I'm leaving," she said quietly. I froze. "What? Why?" Her smile didn't fade. "It's time. The place doesn't need me anymore." That's how I know I did my job. I didn't know what to say. It felt like the ground under me shifted a little. She continued, "I'm not disappearing. Just moving to another branch, helping build new teams, new cultures." Then she looked straight at me. "You'll keep this one steady." I laughed. "Me? I just make coffee." She tilted her head. "Funny. That's what you said when I first met you. Now you speak in meetings, lead projects, mentor new staff. You think that's coffee work?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat was tight. She stood up, walked to the window. "You know," she said, "I used to think silence was survival. But now I know, silence can also be leadership, if it's built on purpose." That stayed with me. When she left, there wasn't a big send-off. No banners, no speeches. Just a quiet Friday afternoon. She hugged a few people, smiled at the rest, and walked out with her same calm grace. And the room stayed silent for a long time after. Weeks went by. Her name was still everywhere. On the reports, in the decisions, in the way people paused before speaking. Claire took over more responsibilities. She'd changed, for real this time. Still firm, still confident, but different. Humble, measured, like she finally understood what power actually meant. One evening, I was closing up the office when Claire stopped by. She leaned on the doorway, watching me lock the drawers. "Funny thing," she said. "I used to think leadership was about being the loudest voice. Now I realize it's about being the last one to speak, after everyone else has been heard. I smiled. She taught us all that. Claire nodded. She did. And she taught me something else too. Sometimes the people we underestimate end up building the foundation we stand on. Then she left, and I stood there for a while, staring at the empty desks, realizing how much one person's quiet strength could change an entire place. Months later, I got an email from Ava. Just a few lines. Hope the team's doing well. Remember, calm doesn't mean passive. It means you've learned which noise is worth answering. I smiled reading it, because by then, I understood. It wasn't just her story anymore. It had become ours. A story about what happens when someone refuses to meet arrogance with anger. When someone fights back, not by shouting, but by standing still. Sometimes I wonder how many people like Ava are out there, sitting in rooms where they are unseen, unheard, quietly holding the kind of strength that scares the loudest in the room. And I ask myself, maybe that's the real power in this world. Not the titles, not the noise, not the money, but the quiet people. The ones who never need to remind you who they are, because when they leave, you still feel them everywhere. Tell me something. Do you think the world would be fairer if more people led the way Ava did? Calm, firm, and unshakably kind. A few months later, life looked normal again on the surface. Work was steady. Mia was thriving in school, and people finally stopped whispering when I walked by. But every now and then, something small would remind me that the world never really forgets. It just moves on to the next story. One day at the grocery store, a man approached me near the cereal aisle. He looked hesitant, like he was trying to remember where he'd seen me before. Then he said, "Hey, aren't you that guy from the video?" I froze for a second. He noticed, and quickly added, No, I read the follow-up story too. You handled that whole thing with class, man." I smiled politely, said thanks, but inside, my stomach still twisted, because no matter what he meant, it was still there. That label, that invisible tag that stuck to my name. After he left, I just stood there for a moment, staring at the cereal boxes, rows and rows of color, but everything felt kind of gray. Later that night, I sat outside on the porch after Mia went to bed, thinking about how easy it is to be reduced to one moment, one wrong assumption, one recording, and you become that guy forever. Even when people say they believe you, they still remember the version that went viral first. It's like the truth never trends long enough to clean your name. A few weeks later, Mia's teacher invited me to speak at the school's parent day. They were doing a series on community kindness, and apparently the principal had read the article about us. At first, I didn't want to do it. The thought of standing in front of strangers again made my palms sweat. But Mia wanted me to. She said, "Daddy, tell them the story so no one else gets hurt like that." So I said yes. The morning of the event, I put on my best shirt, the same one I wore for job interviews, and practiced what I'd say in my head while making breakfast. When we got to the school, the auditorium was full of parents. Some familiar faces, some not. The principal introduced me as a father who experienced something that reminds us all to look deeper before we judge. My throat felt tight, but when I looked down at Mia sitting in the front row, swinging her legs with that bright little smile, I found the strength to start. I told them about the day at the park, how quickly everything spiraled, how the people I trusted, neighbors, strangers, became witnesses to a lie. But I didn't talk with anger. I talked with calm. I said, sometimes the worst thing isn't being accused, it's realizing how easy it is for good people to act out of fear. The room went quiet. I told them how Mia still flinches at sirens sometimes, and how I used to too, but that we both learned something important. That fear and truth don't live in the same place very long. When I finished, people clapped softly. Not loud, not out of excitement, but out of respect. Afterward, a few parents came up to me. One of them, a man I'd never met, said, "I've probably made that same call in my head before. I just never dialed. Thank you for saying what needed to be said." Another woman said she used to work in security, and that she'd seen how quick people are to assume who looks right and who doesn't. Her eyes were wet when she said, "It's not always hate. Sometimes it's habit." Those words stuck with me for weeks. Not always hate. Sometimes habit. It made me wonder how many of us walk around carrying old fears we never questioned. Like inherited luggage from someone else's story. That night, after we got home, Mia hugged me tighter than usual. She said, "You sounded brave, Daddy." I smiled and said, "I was scared the whole time." She giggled and said, "That's what brave people say after." And I realized she was right. Bravery isn't loud. It's doing the hard thing quietly while your hands shake. A few days later, something unexpected happened again. I got a letter from the police department. They wanted to invite me to speak at a community awareness event about how false assumptions can escalate situations. They said the officer from that day, the one who knelt beside Mia, had recommended me. For a moment, I just stared at the letter. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, the part that still believed in fixing what's broken, said yes. The event was held in the same park where everything started. When I arrived, I saw police officers, community leaders, families, and even the woman who had made the call that day. She didn't look at me at first, but when I finished speaking, telling the story again, but this time with purpose, not pain, she walked up slowly. Her voice was trembling when she said, "I volunteer now. I talk to new parents about not assuming. I tell them about you and your daughter." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Then she said something that felt like closure. "I still see that day in my head sometimes. I wish I could take it back. But I also think, maybe it changed both of us." And she was right. It did. Because that day taught me that anger is heavy, but understanding is stronger. It doesn't erase what happened, but it changes what comes after. The local news covered the event, and this time, when my face was on camera, I didn't feel exposed. I felt seen. Not as a victim, but as a voice. That night, after we got home, Mia asked if we could go back to the park the next day. Just to play. Not to talk. Not to make a point. Just play. So we did. The next morning, the air was cool. The grass still wet with dew. And as I watched her run to the swings, I felt something inside me finally quiet down. There were other families there too. One mom waved. Another smiled. No whispers. No stares. Just people. Being people. When Mia came running back, breathless and laughing, she said, "Daddy, it feels normal again." And she was right. It finally did. We stayed until sunset, watched the sky turn gold and then fade into pink. And I realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes justice isn't about punishment. It's about peace. It's about living well in the same place where you were once broken. That night, when Mia fell asleep, I looked through old pictures on my phone. Before all this happened. Back when life was simpler. And I didn't feel sadness this time. I felt gratitude. Because maybe we needed that storm. To see who we were beneath it. I used to think strength was about fighting back. Now I think it's about staying soft when the world tries to harden you. I closed my phone, turned off the light, and whispered into the dark. "We're okay now, baby."